Hey guys, welcome back to the next installment. In this scandal that is developing before our eyes, top Korean actor Kim Soo-hyun has been facing allegations that he dated the late actress Kim Sae-ron starting from when she was underage, pressured her to pay back debts, treated her wrongly in the end of their relationship, and thereby being one of the big reasons for her decision to leave this world. However, Kim Soo-hyun's camp is desperately trying to take off this label of him being largely responsible for the pain and trauma that led to her decision. The camp of Kim Soo-hyun fought back and made some very valid points that we'll get into. The YouTuber that the family is suing, that they are accusing, is in cahoots with Kim Soo-hyun to besmirch their daughter's name during that time, also fought back with some very good evidence and points. However, where did he get all of these recorded conversations? It almost proves that he is in cahoots. So we're gonna go over this. And one of you very astutely pointed out that, how I've been covering this is like seeing how these facts unfold in somebody as they're thinking out loud. And that's what I would like to do to you, to think out loud and as fairly as I can to weigh both sides, but also be very transparent of which side I'm leaning as I'm thinking out loud based on what's coming in. And so you'll see me, go through and say, it's a salad, okay? We got the greens over here, them greens. These are the chopped vegetables or chopped vegetables. We're going to have debates about that, but at least, you can see how I feel about each one instead of just blending it all together and drinking a smoothie and not knowing what's in there for the sake of being like, totally in the middle and impartial. As we weigh each side, we have to see exactly what each side is saying, and then I would like to give an example of how it affects me and how that, weighing one particular thing more than the other and making that choice for me, of how that looks in terms of a stance at the moment if you had to be forced to give a stance. But this is just so convoluted. So this is a much harder case to make an immediate decision of right or wrong. Number one, it's playing out in front of us, but it's a lot different from the Hee-jin situation, because in the Hee-jin case with Hybe versus Hee-jin and New Jeans, we have the evidence that looks irrefutable from her own company's hard drives that outlined the entire project plan of how she was going to steal a music label from Hybe and steal New Jeans, an artist, from Hybe, and how she was going to do it and when, with what timeline. We had all of the facts laid out. So there is not such a situation yet clear, because it doesn't seem like there was a big overall agenda from each of these sides. And the scary part of it, though, that does resonate with the Hee-jin situation, if it is clear, is how much of a media smear manipulation is going on here. How much, again, are people vulnerable? Like, if you're not the one in power, you are vulnerable to basically die metaphorical death of who you are in the media based on, if somebody wants to order it up and use their powerful forces to take you down. Is that what we're seeing in this case as well? Or is it just a journalist in this point, that Lee Jin-ho YouTuber, just using his advantage of inside sources to get the scoop on a story and not necessarily be in cahoots with somebody? In this case, the accusation, he's in cahoots with Kim Soo-hyun to tear down Kim Sae-ron. Is it that? That would be the worst thing. That would be sort of the Jezebel instituted treachery thing that we have seen with the New Jeans Mama situation. Or is it just a reporter who has more inside connections, therefore can get the scoop faster than anybody else, and is presenting a story that has actual evidence that nobody else can get? And by the way, the Mini-Jin situation, we were going to be talking about it, but this whole Kim Soo-hyun story came out the 14th Friday, March. That happened last Friday, was the deadline, I guess, for the end of listening to both sides' assertions. That was the final date. That was the deadline for turning in all of your evidence from both sides after a chance for revision. And then the judge is supposed to be ruling this Friday, Korea time, March 21st. And so we should be hearing from that, very soon, depending on how fast I can get this video edited and out there into the world. So we will be hearing about that. So is the big situation for society, was this an orchestrated campaign to bring down Kim Sae-ron, or just journalists using inside sources for a scoop? Or is the family being used in this pro-Yoon administration political game? Or is it really just taking time for them to be able to get closure the way that they want? And then also people are doubting the family's motives. So this is why this one is very difficult, I think, because not all agree on what is enough to sway them to either side. Yes, in theory, believe that you should, of course, always wait until all of the facts are presented, or innocent until proven guilty. But that is essentially like in a court of law situation. They're not in court, deliberating on this. So of course, when you're in the court situation, or if you're doing an experiment, like in the lab, you have to do the whole innocent until proven guilty, or all possibilities, or, prove the hypothesis or stuff like that. But in the real world, as we're sifting through, we may never get to all of the evidence. We may never, be in a position right away. So for example, the advertisers, they have to make a decision before innocent until proven guilty, the whole proven part. They have to make a decision now to protect their brand or not. And, if they pull out too early, then it looks like they were, just harshly judging Kim Soo-hyun. But if they wait too long, then they're damaging their brand as well. So not everybody in the real world can make these, delay the decision, be like, well, I want to see how everything else works, or I want to see when the court decides. But in this case, again, it's not going to court, or at least yet now, there's nothing that is going to court, especially with the whole question of did he date her as a minor, because by law, there may be nothing to go to court on to nab him, because of the laws at the time make that underage relationship, if true, not illegal. But at the same time, in the real world, there are some advertisers or people who advertise their products and want to use him, and they know their customers, no matter whether if it was technically legal or not, they don't like that situation. So they have to make that choice. And then you have to make that choice based on the available evidence that you have, whether it's enough or not. And so for me, what was enough, just to give you an example, as thinking out loud, of swaying me towards the parents, and then wait, and thereby also, like, not being 100% on their side, but, leaning more towards their side and waiting for them to then follow through with the irrefutable evidence, was that they released a Kakao Talk of Kim Sae-ron outlining in her own words all of the dates and timelines of her dating Kim Soo-hyun starting from 2015. And so it's because I believe that it's enough for me to see at this moment that that Kakao Talk is not fake, although there's no 100% proof. The parents could have totally faked it, but I believe that the parents didn't fake it, and I'm choosing to believe right now that Kim Sae-ron was not lying in this Kakao Talk, that she really did want to address the public because she was being told, you're crazy, you are delulu, you're posting this picture, you probably just, took a selfie with Kim Soo-hyun once when you met him, and now you're saying you're or implying that you're in a relationship, with him. And so she was going to be like, oh no, I've been dating him since 2015. And she didn't release that statement because the company contacted her and said that, okay, we'll work it out. But then the family says they didn't work it out. Just the next day, they couriered over another threatening letter with even more demands. And so that was enough for me to believe while we're waiting for the rest of the evidence to come, that it was enough for me to believe in Kim Sae-ron's own words that she said at the time, believe that she wasn't lying at the time, which was basically March of last year, so almost exactly a year ago, and that her family did not make up this Kakao Talk and put it through some Photoshop or something and, design it. So that was the enough for me. But I think as this is dragging on right now, we do need the faster, irrefutable proof to come. And the family really has to, I think, somehow muster up the mental strength to figure out what that irrefutable proof is. It's not saucy proof. So the problem that I think that is occurring right now is the downside of them going to Garo Sero Research Institute to get out their story, even though they're getting a lot of emotional support and production support and a lot of support from this guy. However, the types of new proof that he's threatening to expose are more of a saucy nature. Sure, maybe you can say this saucier photo comes from the time that is when she was a minor. However, you don't even have to go to that length. You can literally tomorrow, right now, or immediately send over some data for third-party forensic analysis, and it doesn't have to be a sexy photo. It doesn't have to be something that is so lewd to get public attention. It could be the most boring, maybe text message between the two, talking about going shopping together or something like that. But I guess it would have to be somewhat in the sense of if you're trying to prove a romantic relationship, that is, well, that's the onus on the family and Garo Sero, but mainly the family, because I think we do need the irrefutable proof at this point that focuses on what you said you wanted. You said you didn't want any kind of money, you didn't want any kind of scandal, and ironically, I do believe the family when they say that they don't want any scandal. That's why they're just giving a little bit and saying Kim Soo-hyun, you know the truth, okay? We don't have to release the rest of the photos. Just admit it now. But it's not enough for the public, so Kim Soo-hyun's side can afford to basically be that ain't enough. That don't prove anything. And then they're slowly dripping it out. I think right now you need to get irrefutable proof that is not embarrassing at all, but is irrefutable. Send it over to third-party analysis. Use the standards of the court of law, even if you're not in the court of law for this, just to prove what? You want to prove the timeline of the relationship, saying that it's a lengthy relationship, have Kim Soo-hyun apologize and acknowledge the relationship. Now we're getting into territory as this is getting messier, and then all sides are trying to defend themselves with more information. We are getting into messy territory where now it's straying beyond just that simple request for an apology. There's extra add-ons, features, gifts with purchases that start to make us doubt your original motive and your original reason for going into the store to begin with. Did you really just want a carton of milk and some eggs? Or did you really go in there for trying to get a candy bar or you know, a bag of chips or a sandwich or here and there? You guys have to stay focused on proving just what you wanted from this situation. And the family, I don't think for that area cannot rely on Garo Sero Research Institute because their goals are bigger. I would say they were very frank about it. I don't know if they're that frank with the family, but I think it was very frank to the watching and discerning public that when Mr. Garo Sero went into the store, oh no, he wants to speak to the manager and the manager's lawyers and then, you know, rip them to next Sunday. He has a different agenda from this, and the family, I think, really needs to be working with Garo Sero because nobody else is working with them, but then also at the same time focus on what you want and try to come to a resolution quickly. Okay, so let's go over what Kim Soo-hyun's side said most recently and the actions they're taking against Garo Sero Research Institute. They have a huge problem with the picture that Garo Sero released of Kim Soo-hyun doing them dishes with a very questionable situation of what was going on underneath the t-shirt. Was there underwear or not? It looks like he had underwear. We'll leave it to the netizens, sleuths, who have given us an initial analysis and even probably some like AI rendering of based on the shadows on his legs. Oh, it looks like he's wearing boxer shorts. So it wasn't like a total crazy picture, but the way that they just covered that area with the Garo Sero Research Institute sticker makes it suggest that, he kind of freaky when he, you know, does them dishes. And Kim Soo-hyun's side, so this is why it gets like so convoluted and doesn't make each side look very good. Because it looks on Garo Sero's side that they were trying to make him, you know, look more freaky than that picture at least suggests. And then on the Kim Soo-hyun side, they are suing about this photo. And so now, after being coy about whether it was him or not, saying like, oh, we don't know whether it's really him, they're actually suing because they're saying that this is a violation of Kim Soo-hyun by posting this photo, so thereby admitting that that was a photo of Kim Soo-hyun, which then contradicts earlier statements of Kim Soo-hyun saying, oh, I've never been to her house. So by defending one thing makes you guilty about some other half-truth or lie that you said earlier. And so even though I think this is a very, you know, it's kind of at least a valid for Kim Soo-hyun's side to try it, he was saying that, you know, showing parts of the actor Kim Soo-hyun's body can cause a sexual shame in this manner. So that is some category within the law that you can make a complaint for. So it's always a bit unclear sometimes when you're making filing a complaint with the police is not necessarily yet a lawsuit, or it could remain where it never becomes a lawsuit. But a lot of times people say that that's suing. the Garo Sero Research guy, you know, he got this and he's saying like, oh, well, this is just a complaint, okay? Because he ain't really suing us, because if we countersue for all this other information, oh, they don't want to do that. And so they're just making this complaint about his thighs. And then, yes, Mr. Garo Sero Research guy is shady. He's a little bit entertaining in his shade, but he was saying like, what, are you ashamed of your thighs, Kim Soo-hyun? Because I like my thighs. You know, what's wrong with your thighs being shown in the picture? So, I mean, it doesn't make each side look very good. But that was the strong stance that gold medalist Kim Soo-hyun's agency has taken against Garo Sero. Now, Lee Jin-ho, the YouTuber that the family says that they have a problem with, but I wonder if they're being kind of manipulated a little bit by, we definitely know Mr. Garo Sero Research Man has a issue with YouTuber Lee Jin-ho, wants Lee Jin-ho, you know, he even said arrested, swatted. Oh, he needs to get swatted. We'll get into that part, you know, Mr. Garo Sero Research Man's response to all of this. But Lee Jin-ho also made some very valid, I think, points of presentation of primary sources of evidence, but I think it actually makes him look guiltier in the overall picture of, oh, maybe he is colluding with Kim Soo-hyun, or at least there's more of a possibility. Because before, you know, I was saying like most of the stuff I've seen, he has just reported on what's already out there, covered by somebody else in the news cycle. However, the last few videos that he posted were phone recordings of people, and you're just like, okay, who records these phone calls in the first place, and how does he have them? So it's almost as if like, you know, okay guys, you know, I want to prove to you that what I've been, you know, reporting on was right about, you know, let's just say, well, let's just use like deceased actresses, because I don't want to, you know, let's say like, oh, if Marilyn Monroe is still alive, and like, oh yeah, I have this recording of Marilyn Monroe talking to her manager, and, you know, here it is, guys. Well, first of all, who recorded that conversation? And then how do I have it? And how am I the only one releasing it? So thereby it looks like there is an inner network. I could say maybe like, well, you know, the manager and I have a really good relationship, and so I, you know, have access to information. That's just my insider connections, and that's what makes me a good reporter or something like that. But it's still a little sus. It's still a little sus. So he basically is attacking the timeline and the credibility of the aunt. So this is also, you know, it starts to align a little bit more with the talking points of gold medalist. And so now I'm saying like, okay, we are seeing some coverage that is veering me away from thinking like, okay, well, Lee Jin-ho was just talking about what's already in the news cycle, because that was his first position a few days ago. And now he's just, you know, clapping back with actual, okay. So he's saying that there is evidence that the aunt was not trustworthy because she said that she was by Kim Sae-ron's side in January when his video came out. January 8th is when his video came out. And he was saying like, well, the aunt was like, oh yeah, she was horrified. Kim Sae-ron was horrified after watching your video, and I was by her side. And then he's saying like, wait a minute, I have evidence that she couldn't have been by her side because she was in New York. And not only was she in New York, oh, she was with her husband, her secret marriage that she had just gotten married. And not only that, she was pregnant and she just had an abortion. And she's being blackmailed by the husband. That's why she had to marry the husband, even though she didn't want to go through with the marriage. And then, you know, she found out that, you know, he's a little cray-cray, but looks, you know, normal on the surface. Well, how did he back this up? he sent out a recording. He sent out a recording.
그렇게 그냥 지냈는데 여기 남자친구랑 결혼 안 하려고 했는데 이제 잘 이별하려고 하다가 애가 생긴 거예요.
너 임신했니 지금?
아니, 지웠어요.
And the recording was between Kim Sae-ron and her manager. And then there's questions of like who this manager is, and it apparently seems like it's a manager that is still tied or has connections to gold medalists. So it might be a situation where you may have left the agency, but they're still helping you out in some ways. Or it could be a different, a whole new agency. But in any event, how did Lee Jin-ho get this? So that begs the question. If you want to see it from a good angle, wow, he has a lot of inside connections, and he is able to get this data or this evidence and this primary source. Or he's being fed this information and he's going along with this direction that is not favorable to Kim Sae-ron. So what were the highlights of this voice recording? Well, this was when the photos came out on Instagram that said Mary, and it was her in New York with the short hair and some guy with his face blurred out. And originally I was just like, well, maybe she's still hung up on Kim Soo-hyun. In her situation, the way that she was going through, like, it seemed like her dating, the complicated relationships, you could still be hung up on, Kim Soo-hyun and still, even get led into this situation. However, the stance that Lee Jin-ho is trying to make that does benefit Kim Soo-hyun is that actually right before Kim Sae-ron made her final choice, she had this huge trauma going on that had nothing to do with Kim Soo-hyun. It was another man. So this is what presents a very strong case that it wasn't Kim Soo-hyun and his whatever influence on her that made her final choice. She was going through a rough thing right before. And so if we can believe that this voice recording is true, first of all, it sounds like her voice, but these days you never know with all this AI technology. It sounds like her voice, and then they mask the voice of the manager, and the manager was like, what is this Instagram post or this social media post that says like you with this guy and like it says Mary, like people are calling me, asking me like, is she married or like what is going on? And then she said, that wasn't me who posted it. It was my boyfriend who posted it. And the guy was like, is he crazy? And he's saying like, okay, well, when are you coming back here? Are you coming back here on January 10th? And then she said, no, I'm leaving on January 13th. So I'll arrive on January 14th, Korea time. So she couldn't have been there during the, Lee Jin-ho thing and then, have the, cry, have an aunt cry next to her if the video came out on the 8th. However, Garo Sero is also saying like, oh, please, like she watches your video right when it comes out. Like she could have waited until maybe January 15th and, after she was in Korea and watched the video, cried and, had her aunt right next to her. And therefore that still to be true and still, basically saying like, you're a bad person because, you're making her feel bad about this. Now, the recording goes on and on and on and on. And, she kind of said like, okay, she had this other boyfriend that she saw over Christmas, but it was kind of, they broke up. And, she was basically saying like, she was in a complicated situation, okay? And so this guy in America is working for a Korean conglomerate, and she was like, oh yeah, the marriage, it already happened. He's like, what? Like you got married? Like in Korea or over there? And she said, over here. And we met here, then started meeting in Korea, and she wasn't planning to marry this boyfriend, but while she tried to break up with him, she got pregnant, and then she had an abortion, but that was still why she ended up getting married, because he kept threatening her and blackmailing her. Now, she didn't specify exactly over what, but it seemed like enough where she felt like she had to go along with this plan. So she says that he's just a regular guy working at a big company. We met through a mutual acquaintance. And, at first we thought, he was fine, but sometimes he gets anxiety, and especially when he's drunk, a different, like, horrible side comes out. And the crazy thing about here says that, like, he was controlling her KakaoTalk account and Instagram account. So that's how he was able, if we believe her in this recording, if we believe that this recording is real, she said that, he uploaded it because he's like, why aren't you telling everybody we're married? We're married. I'm married to the great Kim Sae-ron. This should go out there. And so he uploaded it himself, and then he deleted it soon afterwards. And she said that is the truth of the situation. And it looks like the manager asked, like, okay, did your parents know about, like, he's kind of crazy like this, and did they approve? And she said even her parents really didn't know. He's really normal in just normal situations. And so that's it. Suggests she kind of like tapered off in that response, but it does show from Lee Jin-ho's side that, okay, the parents knew, even though the family side is saying, like, they didn't know about this situation. In the end, she and the manager just said that, okay, well, we're gonna go with the story to the public that it was just like a Snapchat type of thing, and it's just a friend type of thing. And then they ended saying, like, hey, contact me when the manager says, contact me when you get back to Korea. And she's like, okay. So Mr. Lee Jin-ho, to defend his name and honor, but thereby also make himself, again, look like, how do you have access to such intimate, personal phone recordings? First of all, it's really sus that these people are recording these phone calls in the first place. And then secondly, how does he have access to it? So that part looks super shady. However, what was said, and then how does that relate to the overall objective for Lee Jin-ho's side, helping Kim Soo-hyun, either directly or indirectly, is to establish that her motives for leaving this world was not Kim Soo-hyun, but this dysfunctional new husband that she got. So this next conversation was between Mr. A, an acquaintance of Kim Sae-ron, and an official from the agency, and it was recorded on the day that Kim Sae-ron chose to depart this world. And they were asking, like, why do you think it happened? And, like, I just saw her, like, the day before yesterday. And the guy was like, yeah, it's probably because of that guy from New York. And he said that she told her that she got hit, assaulted, even got photos of the assault, and even having, like, marks on her body, and being threatened with blackmail. And so this acquaintance says that, oh yeah, I think that's why she did it. Of course, it's just the acquaintance assertion. He or she can't know everything, or definitively why, but this is their opinion, this is their viewpoint, and because she's supposedly he or she is very close to Kim Sae-ron, that may give a little bit more credibility. In some people's minds, that might be enough. Oh, that's enough for me to think like Kim Soo-hyun had nothing to do with it. It was the crazy new boyfriend turned husband. So she said that, or this person said that she sent a photo. Kim Sae-ron sent a photo with a knife mark on her neck. And so she was abused and blackmailed, and because of that guy, says this acquaintance, she might have taken her own life. And so that was the gist of that conversation to then show. So these two videos start to show that there is credibility issues with the family members. That's what is being kind of asserted, and if you look at it as a media play, and also now introduces a new character, we'll just call it a New York husband, who might be the actual catalyst or trigger for her decision on this 16th, or at least create enough doubt or add it to the equation where Kim Soo-hyun can get this bad guy label off of him. And so that's what the critics were getting into, the biggest critic of them all, right? In this drama, as an active character in this drama, Mr. Garo Sero, who claps back at Lee Jin-ho and Kim Soo-hyun, says that this is part of an orchestrated media campaign run by that uber powerful law firm that is really Mr. Garo Sero's main target to shoot down. So first, Mr. Garo Sero is saying like, well, y'all are protesting the photo that I uploaded, and you're not even making a lawsuit, but this is just a criminal complaint, just like filing a report at the police station. Are they afraid we'll counterattack with false accusation charges? That's why it's a complaint instead of a lawsuit. And then he said that, when I contacted the family said that, even the devil isn't this evil. It is absurd. And Mr. Garo Sero was saying like, all this time they've been suggesting that this photo might not be me. It's just the picture of the back. And they were activating, fans and netizens to support, the possibility that, how can you tell that's Kim Soo-hyun? It's just a picture of a dude, from the back. And then he's saying like, now they're saying it's causing, sexual humiliation. That just shows your intellectual level. And again, as I said before, he started to go throwing some shade about, why are you ashamed of your thighs? It's just your thighs that are showing in this picture. I like my thighs. I don't know how this is sexually humiliating you unless you have a complex about your thighs. Then he puts in a very coy threat saying, regarding Seo-ji, one of his co-stars and also clients at the agency that Kim Soo-hyun had been running, why don't we, delve into that a little bit later, or why don't you ask her for her stance? And he's saying, yeah, we got something brewing right now. So again, this is why I think the family needs to stiffen up and be a little bit more directive, because this is now like Mr. Garo Sero has the reins to this, and now he's going off in directions, now like trying to say something with like Seo-ji, like, why you're gonna be bringing all these other, people to the rodeo when they ain't, they don't want to get on top of, the bull riding machine. This is supposed to be focusing on Kim Soo-hyun and whether he can apologize and acknowledge the long relationship. And now he's saying like, we got something brewing with like Seo-ji, thrown into the mix. So that part, I don't like. So how does he now counter Lee Jin-ho's claims by saying like, look, I got evidence that you guys are in cahoots, because there's no way for Lee Jin-ho to come out with this video 15 minutes after this exclusive article that came out on News N this week, 6:54 p.m. And he's saying that 15 minutes after this article was published, the truth Kim Sae-ron's family is hiding had been released. And this article, the exclusive article, was essentially saying that there is this control tower situation where a law firm, LKB, the one that is on the hit list for Mr. Garo Sero, is handling the legal reviews and acting as the central control tower in this, media manipulation to protect Kim Soo-hyun. And that there's a second management team monitoring media and advertisements, and then a crisis team composed about 4 external experts, all in operation together. And he's saying an example of this is like, how does Mr. Lee Jin-ho have this video that basically mirrors that type of situation that helps Kim Soo-hyun. Now, one of the parts in this exclusive article was about this 2-week trip to the United States that Kim Sae-ron took in January, and she about posting the picture, the word Mary, and that the explanation was essentially that she had married a Korean American working at an American company that she had promised to marry, and all of that was very much in line with the voice recording that he seemed to only have exclusive access to. And so they're suggesting at, Garo Sero that, wow, like this is a little bit too coordinated. And, in my opinion, I would say that, what Lee Jin-ho released, at least from what I've seen, like no other media outlets had access to that and, had the exclusive to that. He was the first one. So this does then lend a little bit of credibility to Garo Sero's assertions that this guy is getting a little bit too much perfectly aligned evidence for his stories, like voice recordings and things like that, and pictures that come out a little bit too fast for it to be like a reporter really chasing his sources and trying to get scoops. It's a little bit too fast for that. But it's not too fast if he's part of the planning committee or the orchestration of it all and being fed all of this for his own benefit. And this Garo Sero Research guy is like, this Lee Jin-ho, he deserves to get like a search and seizure. And when that happens, they bust down your door. Yeah, like just in the movies, the fire department comes, they pop it open with a machine. Yeah, the handle flies off and the door explodes. And he said, I experienced it myself, so I know. So the only way to fix this is that he needs to go to get locked up. So, okay. I mean, it's a little bit consistent because, Mr. Garo Sero Research is supporting a president who did the whole martial law declaration, lock everybody up. So, it kind of fits, but I don't know, like, your fellow colleagues in the news industry just basically like, lock him up, lock him up, lock him up. That's a little bit too far. And he is actually very specific with accusing the person who is actually feeding Lee Jin-ho this information. And he is alleging that it was this manager, Kim Soo-hyun's manager, Mr. Kwak. So he's saying, like, well, how much did he get paid from Kim Soo-hyun to be, recording these conversations in the first place and then passing them off to Lee Jin-ho. So that's what that was the main thrust of the clapback by Mr. Garo Sero. He gave clarification on an emergency press conference that he wanted to hold with the family present, but he said the mother said, I can't do this right now. Feel like I'm going to die. And he said that, you know, she's just like skin and bones in this moment. But instead, she sent a letter, you know, a letter that she wrote to her dead daughter, and they had a voice actress read it.
돈이 뭐라고. 조금 더 옆에 있을걸. 일한다고 마지막 순간을 옆에서 지켜주지 못했어. 무서웠지. 지나고 나니 이것도 저것도 모두가 후회만 남아. 내내 시달리기만 하고.
So on the one hand, you could look at it like, wow, they are really making this sappy and trying to manipulate us. On the other hand, you know, it did feel very heartfelt. Did she really write? So this is why it makes it not look good. It just brings up more doubts the longer they drag this out, because, like, you know, did this mother really write it? You know, if she's skin and bones, how did she write such a great poetic letter? On the other hand, if she's really tormented and she poured her heart into it, yes. But really, we just, you know, rather than, although these things are nice to see, to color the story and to give us more, you know, perspective on it, we really just need a very clinically cold, hard, definitive proof that focuses on Kim Soo-hyun just admitting the timeline and apologizing, not dragging in Seo Ye-ji, not dragging in this other manager, not dragging in Lee Jin-ho, like just you're making this whole thing because for Mr. Garo Sero Research guy, his target is this law firm that is, he says, at the crux of the impeachment campaign for the president that he loves and wants to keep in power. So this just is perfect for Mr. Garo Sero, for his world of trying to make not have President Yoon impeached. Apparently the impeachment ruling will be on Monday, next Monday, Korea time. So Friday, Korea time, if it hasn't happened already, by the time this video is out, we should hear about the injunction decision for New Jeans Mama, or New Jeans, indirectly New Jeans Mama, but mainly New Jeans at this point, for this injunction, and then to see the, you know, how the future is going to be playing out with the actual breach of contract case, or upholding the contract. That is a separate case, and that's starting early next month. And so, yes, this is still like sad. This is heartbreaking, and we're seeing a lot of extra information. I mean, Mr. Garo Sero just even bringing up like, oh, we visited her family home. It's cramped. They're all living there, and there's this dog that she rescued from the shelter. Yes, these are all great story time visualizations, but can we just focus on the actual meat and potatoes? And like I said, Mr. Garo Sero wants to bring out the patbingsu and make it about, you know, his martial law and impeachment fight. We need to focus, try to have everybody focus on just really satisfy the parents, let them get closure, and then let Kim Soo-hyun take responsibility for whatever truly is his part of the responsibility, or just be able to come out of this situation addressing the family and the public like a caring human being, or not. That's totally up to him. But really, again, focus should be on the family, not President Yoon's impeachment. That's how I feel at this moment in this latest part of this just very messy and very sad, you know, situation that's going on in Korea. All right, guys, How do you feel? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.